Hello, I'm That Geeky Gamer, and welcome to my show. When it comes to video game characters, there are a few that have become popular mascots. The first one was Pac-Man, who became the mascot of Namco, and ever since then there have been several characters that have tried to be the face of a company. The most popular is most likely Mario, the face of Nintendo, but what about their former rival SEGA? Well, they have Sonic, right? They have always had Sonic, haven't they? Well, not exactly. You see, there was a time before Sonic when a scrappy little guy tried to become Sega's answer to Mario. As you probably guessed, he didn't exactly succeed, but should he be forgotten, or did he have something going for him? Well, why don't we take a look at one of his games and find out? He did star in about 6 games, but why don't we start at the beginning and take a look at Alex Kidd in Miracle World. First of all, I would just like to mention that this game was one of the earliest gaming experiences of my life. Yes, there were some other games I played before this, but this is probably the first game I remember truly fondly. The Sega Master System was the first video game console I ever had, and thus, this game was among the first games I ever played. We did have an Amstrad CPC before the Master System, but that was really more of a computer, wasn't it? At any rate, this game was one of my earliest gaming experiences, so this is going to be really nostalgic for me, but I'll try not to let that interfere with this review. Anyway, for those of you who don't know, Alex Kidd in Miracle World is a platform game set in, where else, Miracle World. You play as Alex Kidd, a little monkey boy with huge fists, and your goal is to save the populace from the clutches of the evil Yankin the Great. In order to do this, Alex will primarily use his fists to punch everything in sight. Everything from rocks, parrots and fish to a huge raging bull. And no, I'm not talking about Robert De Niro. I mean an actual bull. Yeah, you punch that bull, Alex. Punch him in the face! He's such a badass. In addition to his fists, there are a few items that Alex can collect and use. There's the teleport powder that makes him invincible for a short time, the cane of flight, which allows him to fly for a limited time, the magic capsule A, which releases 8 mini versions of Alex that fights off enemies for him, the magic capsule B, which surrounds Alex in a protective barrier, there's the power bracelet, which shoots a beam of destruction that can destroy enemies and rocks from a distance, there's the life, which of course gives Alex an extra life, the Sukupaku motorcycle, which can break through rocks and allows Alex to travel faster, the Pedicopter, a small pedal-operated helicopter that can shoot missiles, and there's the Sweet boat, a small speedboat that can also fire missiles. Most of these items are bought from shops, but some of them can also be found in boxes. These items are very helpful, and some of them have a specific moment or a specific enemy that they at least seem to be meant for. Yes, they can be used whenever you want, that is, except for the vehicles, but as said, some items seem to be meant for a specific situation. For instance, the cane of flight is a must-have and must-use in the woods, depending a bit on how far you manage to get with the motorcycle, if you buy it. You see, there are plenty of pits full of spikes that are near impossible to get over without the cane of flight, so you're more than likely going to use it here. The magic capsule A also has a specific moment it seems to be meant for. Although you could use several other strategies for this moment, the boss fight against the blue samurai bear in the woods seems meant for the magic capsule A. Just use it and the mini Alexis? Guys will take care of them for you while you relax and dodge the rocks being thrown at you by the monkey. At any rate, the items are a great addition and they make the game a bit more interesting. Now, one of the biggest and most memorable parts of Alex Kidd is the games of Yankin Pon, or as it's better known in the Western world, Rock Paper Scissors. You see, at the end of certain levels, Alex has to face one of the great Yankin's henchmen and win a game of Rock Paper Scissors. This became sort of a staple of the series, and I have to admit, it's kind of a unique feature, and it's really fun. In fact, I still remember how much I loved getting to these parts when I was a kid. Those were the days. Sitting down in front of the TV, firing up my SEGA, and playing a bit of Alex Kidd. Ah.
Of my mind, misty watercolor memories of the way.
As I said, the rock paper scissors fights are pretty fun and definitely unique. I mean, there's not that many games where you do anything other than kill the bosses in one way or another. The only thing that is slightly disturbing about these fights is that when you win, your opponent gets turned into an onigiri, or a rice ball if you will. Alex then takes the onigiri and eats it. Isn't that kind of like cannibalism? I know that these Yunkin henchmen aren't all human, at least they don't appear to be, but they are within the same sort of fairly undefined species that Alex is in, aren't they? And yes, they aren't technically anything other than food after they get turned into an onigiri, but would you eat a rice ball if you saw someone get turned into it first? This actually gets even more disturbing if you use the integrated version that was included with the Master System 2, in which the henchman gets turned into a hamburger. I guess we finally figured out where the burgers at McDonald's actually comes from. Okay, so that's not really a surprise to anyone, but still. It's disgusting. Delicious, but disgusting. Anyone else in the mood for a burger? Anyway, why don't we look a bit closer at the individual components of the game. Let's start with the graphics. They're good. Very good. Okay, so that's not really the most exciting thing to talk about. I mean, there's not really all that much to say about it. The game looks great, and that's about all there is to say about the graphics. So, let's move on to something that I have a little more to say about, the controls. As you probably know, the controls are a very important factor for any game, which is why it's a good thing that the controls in this game are very good. For the most part. You see, although the controls generally work well, they can occasionally feel a bit slippery. What I mean is that it can sometimes be a bit hard to be precise, especially with certain jumps and platforms. It just feels like Alex is wearing oil-slick shoes or something. He slides a bit too much. The controls for the underwater levels are also a bit wonky. You see, in these levels, there's a bit more resistance and friction in the controls, which can make it feel like you have to struggle against the controls a bit more than necessary. I get that they were trying to make the controls feel more like if you are actually underwater, but it doesn't really work. Overall though, the controls are pretty decent, and although they're not perfect, the minor flaws don't really get in the way of the overall experience. As for the music, well, what can I say? It's great! There are plenty of tunes here that are very memorable. I mean, some of these themes have been stuck in my head ever since I first played this game, like the main theme. The Pedicopter theme. And of course, the Yunkin theme. And those are just a few of the really memorable music themes from this game. I mean it, almost every single theme in this game is so well made and memorable that you will never, ever forget them. No matter how hard you try. They just won't leave. Ever! They just dig deeper and deeper into your mind until you feel like taking a pickaxe to your head just to get them out! So yeah, the music is pretty damn good. But it never stops! So other than the fact that the music will never leave you alone, it is very, very good. But can the same be said for the sound effects? Well, yeah, actually it can. Overall, the sound effects are just great. The jumping sound might get a little annoying considering you hear it every single time you jump, but that's really a very minor complaint. Other than that, I really don't have any complaints about the sound effects. Another thing to talk about are the vehicle levels. For the most part, they are very enjoyable, and I usually look forward to playing them. But sometimes they can be slightly frustrating, like when you just barely touch a block with the blades on your pedicopter, drop down from the sky and have to complete the rest of the level on foot or underwater. Or how about the wood level, where you can buy a motorcycle only to find out that you most likely are going to crash it a fairly short time after starting it up. For the most part though, there isn't much wrong with the vehicle levels. They are very, very enjoyable. The only other things worth mentioning is that the hit detection in this game can sometimes feel a bit off, although that is fairly rare. Usually, it's spot on, but a few times it can be just slightly off. Lastly, I would just say that in terms of difficulty, this game feels almost perfectly balanced. Yeah, it can get somewhat difficult and a little frustrating, but really not any more than what you'd expect. I mean, there has to be some challenge in the game, otherwise it's just boring, and Alex Kidd in Miracle World seems to have found that perfect place between a fair challenge and an unforgiving arse rape. And that's about all I have to say about this game. It's really, really great. It's a shame that the later games weren't as good, and that Alex Kidd faded away into a distant memory, because I for one feel that there definitely would have been a place for Alex Kidd in today's gaming market. In fact, I think SEGA would have been better off attempting to resurrect Alex Kidd, rather than beating the dead horse that was Sonic for so many years. We can only hope that they might try to bring him back now that they finally managed to make a good Sonic game again. At any rate, Alex Kidd in Miracle World is a great game, and every gamer should at least give it a try sometime. Trust me, you won't be disappointed. So anyway, that's it for this week. I hope you enjoyed it, and thanks for watching. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to go shoot the music out of my head. Bye.